Daniel Reeves's hands were shaking as he buckled his 8-year-old son into seat 12F, not from fear of flying, from the weight of the titanium bracelet on his wrist that no one could see. The woman in 12E pulled her designer handbag closer, wrinkling her nose at his oil-stained jacket like he was something dirty she'd accidentally touched. She had no idea those same hands had once carried 2 wounded operators 3 miles through enemy territory. No idea the failure sitting beside her wore a call sign that would make every Navy SEAL in America snap to attention. But in 45 minutes, when their plane made an emergency landing at the most secure naval base in the country, she was about to find out exactly who she'd been judging. Comment what city you're watching from. Let's see how far this story flies. The leather seat cost more than 3 months of Daniel's rent. He knew because he'd done the math while the gate agent handed him the upgrade paperwork with that look. The one that said, "You sure you belong here? Veterans courtesy upgrade. Free." But nothing about this felt like a gift. "Dad, this is so cool." Noah pressed his face against the window, clutching a scratched Navy SEAL Challenge coin like a lifeline. The coin had been a gift from his mother 2 weeks before she died. Same week, Daniel sold his medals to cover Noah's hospital bills after the asthma attack that nearly killed him. Those medals had his call sign engraved on them. Shadow 1. "Buckle up, buddy." Daniel's voice came out rougher than he intended. He cleared his throat, adjusted the titanium bracelet on his wrist. The inscription hidden under his sleeve where it belonged. Where it had lived for 3 years, ever since the Navy decided broken men couldn't be trusted with classified operations. The woman settling into 12E arrived like a storm system. Designer carry-on, Hermès scarf, that particular shade of blonde that cost more than Daniel made in 2 months at Murphy's Auto Repair. She glanced at Daniel, once processed the Walmart jeans, the worn work boots, the ghost of motor oil under his fingernails, and dismissed him entirely. Victoria Hartley. He'd heard the gate agent use her name. CEO of Triton Defense Systems. The kind of woman who bought the equipment Daniel's teams used to carry into combat. Treated military contracts like investment portfolios instead of the gear that brought sons and daughters and fathers home. She sighed. Not quite loud enough to be confrontational, just loud enough to make her point. Daniel had learned to read these moments, the micro-calculations people made, the seat assignments they resented, the space they wished they didn't have to share. "Excuse me." Victoria flagged down the flight attendant before the woman had even finished stowing someone else's bag. "Is there any way to—" She gestured vaguely toward first class. The flight attendant's smile was professional sympathy. "I'm so sorry, Ms. Hartley. We're completely full today." Victoria's jaw tightened. She returned to her seat like she was being forced into economy on a budget airline. Pulled out her phone, erected a wall of importance between herself and the situation beside her. Daniel focused on Noah. His son was making the challenge coin dance between his fingers. Soft clicking sounds barely audible. The coin had been Sarah's lucky charm through 6 deployments. She'd given it to Noah the night before that final mission. "Keep this safe for me, baby. Mommy will be back before you know it." She never came back. "Sir." The flight attendant appeared with that careful smile they reserved for passengers they weren't quite sure about. "Can I get you something to drink before takeoff?" "Water's fine, thanks." Daniel kept his voice neutral, polite, small. "And for the little one." "Apple juice, please." Noah looked up, remembered his manners. "Thank you, ma'am." The flight attendant's smile warmed. Kids always got the benefit of the doubt. It was the men in oil-stained jackets who had to earn it. Victoria was on her phone now, voice pitched just loud enough to claim territory. "No, I told you to push the meeting to Thursday. I don't care if Admiral Morrison has scheduling conflicts. Our contract, our timeline. They can adjust." She talked about admirals like most people talked about plumbers, service providers, vendors, people who existed to accommodate her schedule. Daniel felt Noah shift beside him, making his coin quieter. His son had developed this 6th sense for when Dad was tense, when the air felt wrong, when it was better to be smaller. Those coins are so noisy on long flights. Victoria wasn't talking to anyone specifically, just announcing her observation to the universe. I once sat next to a child who played with some military trinket for 5 straight hours. Unbearable. The businessman across the aisle chuckled. Solidarity and shared suffering. Noah's hands stilled. The challenge coin stopped mid-flip. He looked up at Daniel with those gray eyes. Sarah's eyes. Asking a question he was too young to put into words. Did I do something wrong? Daniel's jaw clenched hard enough to hurt. His hand found Noah's shoulder, squeezed gently. You're fine. You're perfect. This isn't about you. But it was about them. Wasn't it about being the wrong kind of people in the right kind of seats? About not fitting? About taking up space in a world that had already decided they didn't deserve it? The flight attendant returned with drinks. Victoria's water came in actual glass. Daniel's in plastic. Noah's juice in a small cup with a lid. Small distinctions that communicated everything. Thank you. Daniel took his water-made eye contact, smiled like he wasn't calculating the exact difference between glass and plastic. Between respect and dismissal, the engines began their pre-flight whine. Daniel knew this sound in his bones. Boeing 737-800, late 2000s model. He'd consulted on emergency extraction procedures for this exact aircraft 4 years ago. 8-week contract that paid for Noah's preschool and 2 months of rent before it ended, and he was back to changing oil and rotating tires. The captain's voice came through the speakers, professional calm. Folks, this is Captain Mitchell. We're cleared for takeoff. Flight time to San Diego will be 3 hours and 40 minutes. Weather looks good. Sit back, relax, and we'll have you there before you know it. Daniel listened to the voice and wondered about the man behind it. Military training or civilian track? Had he learned to fly in small Cessnas? Or had he fast-roped from helicopters into hostile territory, while bullets cracked past his head? Victoria pulled out her tablet. Spreadsheets project timelines, numbers representing budgets Daniel couldn't fathom. She worked with the aggressive efficiency of someone who needed everyone to know how busy, how important, how valuable her time was. The plane pushed back from the gate. That familiar sensation of movement, of transition, of leaving ground behind. Noah's hand found Daniel's, small fingers squeezing tight. The boy loved takeoffs but still got nervous, still needed Dad. We're okay, buddy. Daniel squeezed back, just like always. The 737 taxied toward the runway. Daniel tracked every sound, every movement. The turn onto the taxiway, the pause at the hold short line, the clearance from tower, the alignment on center line. His body remembered all of it. The pre-flight checks, the weight calculations, the weather assessments, the backup plans for the backup plans. Everything that went into putting a machine in the air and bringing it back down with everyone intact. They reached the runway. The engines spooled up that distinctive whine building to a roar. Noah pressed back into his seat, grinning. This was his favorite part. The brakes released. The plane accelerated. Daniel felt the speed build, the aerodynamics shifting. The moment when the wings began to generate lift. Rotation. The nose came up. The ground fell away. They were flying. Chicago disappeared below them, giving way to clouds and sky. Daniel used to own this space, used to command it from helicopters and transport aircraft, inserting his teams into places most people couldn't find on a map. Now he was just another passenger. Just another person in a seat watching the world he used to inhabit from the outside. Dad. Noah's whisper was barely audible over the engine noise. Yeah, buddy. Do you think Mom can see us up here? The question landed like shrapnel. Sharp, unexpected. The kind of wound that didn't bleed externally, but carved you hollow inside. Daniel swallowed hard. Love doesn't need altitude, buddy. She sees you always. From anywhere. Victoria glanced over. Just for a second, something flickered across her face, Curiosity or judgment or both. Then vanished as she returned to her tablet. Daniel felt her assessment, heard her unspoken conclusion. Single father, dead wife, cheap clothes. Probably can't even afford this flight without charity. She wasn't wrong about the last part. The veterans' upgrade was the only reason they were in business class instead of squeezed into middle seats in row 38. The flight leveled out. The seatbelt sign dinged off. Victoria immediately started another phone call. I'm reviewing the contract specifications now. They're completely unacceptable. I don't care what Raytheon's reputation is. If they can't meet our standards, they don't get the contract. She emphasized standards like it was a weapon. We're talking about military equipment here, not toys. She practically spat the last word. Noah flinched, pulled his challenge coin closer to his chest, stopped playing entirely. Daniel felt something crack inside him. That careful control he maintained, that determination to stay small and quiet and not make waves, it fractured. His hand covered Noah's. Your coin is perfect, buddy. Don't let anyone tell you different. Victoria heard. Her eyes flicked over. For half a second, something like awareness crossed her face. Then it was gone, replaced by the armor of importance. She finished her call, returned to her tablet. Building that wall again, the wall that said, I'm too busy, too successful, too valuable to be bothered with you. Daniel had met people like her during his years in uniform. Contractors who toured bases with designer luggage, who took selfies with equipment they'd never understand, who complained about accommodations, and treated service members like obstacles between them and profit margins. They saw the contracts, never the people. The flight attendant came through with snacks. Victoria got the premium option without asking. Daniel and Noah got standard pretzels. Thank you. Daniel smiled, kept it light, kept it easy. Noah opened his pretzels carefully, eating them one at a time, making them last. He'd learned early that snacks were something you rationed, not something you took for granted. Daniel watched his son and felt the familiar weight of inadequacy. He should be giving this boy more. Better food, newer clothes, a home without water stains on the ceiling, and heat that only worked when it felt like it. But all he had was love, and presence, and stubborn refusal to let shame make them smaller. Victoria's tablet chimed. Another call. The field teams are asking for upgraded body armor again. Tell them our current equipment meets minimum specifications. That's sufficient. We're not running a charity. Profit margins matter. She talked about field teams like they were line items, reduced human beings to cost-benefit analyses. Daniel's knuckles went white on the armrest. Those field teams she dismissed so casually. They were wearing the gear her company built, trusting the equipment she approved, betting their lives on her profit margins. And she talked about them like they were asking for unreasonable luxuries instead of protection that might bring them home alive. 17 names. 17 operators Daniel had lost over his career. Some to enemy fire. Some to equipment failures. Some to decisions made in boardrooms by people who'd never heard a bullet crack past their head. Sarah's name was the 18th. Dad? Noah's voice was small. Are you okay? Daniel forced his hand to relax. Yeah, buddy. I'm fine. But he wasn't fine. He was angry. Angry at Victoria's casual cruelty. Angry at the system that valued profit over people. Angry at himself for sitting here silent while she diminished everything he'd once been. Everything Sarah had died for. Except Victoria didn't know what he'd been. She saw oil stains and Walmart jeans and made her conclusions. Never looked deeper. Never wondered if maybe, just maybe, the man in the worn jacket had a story worth hearing. 2 hours into the flight, Noah had fallen asleep against Daniel's shoulder. The challenge coin still clutched in his small hand. Daniel sat motionless, not wanting to wake him, watching his son's chest rise and fall with each breath. This boy was everything. The reason Daniel got up every morning. The reason he showed up at that auto shop and let customers talk down to him and accepted the $14 an hour that barely covered rent. For Noah. Everything was for Noah. Victoria had moved on to a video conference, her laptop propped on the tray table, her voice carrying despite the headphones. The Navy contract is worth $47 million. I don't care what corners we have to cut. Make it work. Cut corners on Navy contracts. Daniel closed his eyes, tried to breathe through the rage building in his chest. Sarah had died because of cut corners. A helicopter with faulty components. A manufacturer who'd prioritized profit over safety. An extraction that should have been routine, but became a death sentence because someone in a boardroom decided minimum specifications were good enough. They weren't good enough. Not for Sarah. Not for the 2 other operators who died that night. Not for Noah, who'd never see his mother again. Sir? Daniel's eyes snapped open. The flight attendant was there. Her expression different now. Concerned. Sir, are you all right? You're very pale. He hadn't realized his breathing had changed. Hadn't noticed his hands gripping the armrests, like he was holding himself in place. I'm fine. Just tired. The flight attendant didn't look convinced, but she nodded and moved on. Victoria had noticed the exchange. She was watching Daniel now with something that might have been curiosity. Their eyes met. Daniel saw her take in the sweat on his forehead, the tension in his jaw, the way his hands had gone white-knuckled on the armrests. Nervous flyer. Her tone was almost sympathetic, almost human. Something like that. She held his gaze for a moment longer than necessary, then turned back to her laptop, dismissing him once again. But something had shifted. Daniel could feel it. That crack in her armor. That brief moment of recognition that the man beside her was actually a person. Not just an obstacle or an inconvenience or a reminder of classes she considered beneath her. It wouldn't last. People like Victoria didn't change because of one uncomfortable flight. They went back to their corner offices and their profit margins and their casual cruelty. But for one moment, she'd seen him. It wasn't enough. It would never be enough. But it was something. Noah stirred against his shoulder. The challenge coin slipped from his fingers, landing on Daniel's knee. Daniel picked it up carefully, turned it over in his hands. The Navy SEAL trident on one side, Sarah's name engraved on the other. Commander Sarah Reeves, Shadow 2. They'd been a team, in every sense of the word. Partners in marriage, partners in combat, partners in raising the small boy now sleeping against Daniel's chest. She'd been better than him at everything. Faster, smarter, more respected. The first female operator in their unit's history. A pioneer who'd kicked down doors and proved that excellence had no gender. And now she was a name on a coin. A memory that faded a little more each year. A mother Noah would only know through photographs and stories. Daniel slipped the coin into his pocket. Kept it safe. Just like Sarah had asked. The captain's voice crackled through the speakers again. But this time something was different. Daniel heard it immediately. That subtle tightness that controlled tension of a pilot dealing with a problem. Folks, we've got a minor technical situation here. Nothing to be alarmed about, but we're going to make a precautionary landing at Naval Base Coronado. Flight attendants, please prepare the cabin for landing. The cabin shifted. Passengers stirred, pulled out phones, started texting loved ones. Victoria's composure cracked. Her perfectly maintained facade showed its first real fracture. Technical situation. What does that mean? The flight attendant moved through the aisle with practiced calm. Just a precaution, ma'am. Everything's under control. But Daniel heard what she didn't say. Heard it in the captain's voice. In the flight attendant's too careful reassurance. In the way the plane was already beginning a steeper than normal descent. This wasn't minor. This was serious enough to override standard procedures. Serious enough to make an emergency landing at a military installation instead of routing to a civilian airport. Hydraulics maybe, or engine trouble. Something that made continuing to San Diego too risky. Daniel's hands ached to reach for controls that weren't there. His mind was already running through emergency checklists, calculating scenarios, preparing for outcomes. Noah stirred, opened his eyes. "Dad, what's happening?" Daniel smoothed the fear from his face. Put on the calm he'd learned in combat, the unshakable steady that made terrified team members believe they'd survive. "Everything's fine, buddy. We're just taking a different path, like when we take the back roads home." Noah nodded. Trusted Dad completely, the way 8-year-olds did. Victoria was gripping her armrest knuckles, white laptop forgotten. All that importance, all that authority, meaningless in the face of physics and mechanical failure. For just a moment she was human, scared, vulnerable. The descent steepened. Daniel felt the pilot working harder than he should, fighting something, compensating. The engine sounded wrong. Not catastrophic, but wrong enough. Other passengers didn't notice, but Daniel did. Every sound, every vibration, every adjustment telegraphed the problem to someone who understood the language. The businessman across the aisle was texting frantically. 2 rows back, someone was crying quietly. Victoria had closed her eyes, lips moving in what might have been prayer. Noah pressed against Daniel's side. "Dad, I'm scared." "I know, buddy." Daniel wrapped his arm around his son. "But the pilots know what they're doing. They train for this. We're going to be fine." He made his voice certain, absolute, even though his own heart was racing, even though memories of Sarah's last mission were screaming in his head. The ground was rushing up now, California coastline visible through the window. And there it was, Naval Base Coronado, home of the Navy SEALs. Daniel felt something shift in his chest. A door he'd kept locked for 3 years rattling on its hinges. This was his world. The world he'd walked away from. The world that had decided he was no longer fit for it. "Look, buddy," he pointed out the window. "See those buildings? That's a Navy base." Noah's fear was momentarily replaced by wonder. "Really? Really? See those helicopters on the tarmac? Those are the same kind Mommy used to fly in." The boy pressed his face to the window, searching for glimpses of the world his mother had belonged to. The wheels touched down hard, harder than a normal landing, but controlled. The pilot had fought for it and won. The plane decelerated, reverse thrust whining, emergency vehicles flanking them just in case. Applause broke out. That nervous relief of people who'd been afraid without admitting it. Daniel didn't clap. He was cataloging every sound, every sensation. Running post-flight checklists his brain couldn't forget, even after 3 years of changing oil and rotating tires. Victoria opened her eyes. Color was returning to her face. The moment of vulnerability was already closing, replaced by something harder. But she'd been scared. Daniel had seen it. Beneath the designer clothes and the profit margins and the casual cruelty, she'd been just another human being confronting mortality. The plane came to a stop. The seatbelt sign dinged off. The captain's voice returned, relief audible now. "Well, folks, we're safely on the ground at Naval Base Coronado. Maintenance will need to inspect the aircraft. You're welcome to deplane and wait in the passenger terminal. We'll keep you updated." Passengers were already standing, grabbing bags, complaining about delays and missed connections. Victoria was on her phone before her seatbelt was off. "I need you to reschedule everything. I don't know how long. Just do it." Her fear had lasted maybe 30 seconds. Now she was back to being important. Daniel helped Noah gather his things. The challenge coin now safely in Daniel's pocket. His small backpack. The half-eaten pretzels. They filed toward the exit. Daniel moved slowly, reluctant, in a way he couldn't name. Being back on a military installation felt like visiting his own funeral, like walking through a life that had belonged to someone else, someone who died the day Sarah did, even though his body kept breathing. They stepped into California sun. Heat hit like a physical force. The tarmac shimmered. The smell of jet fuel was immediate and overwhelming. Daniel inhaled deeply. That smell. It was muscle memory. It was home. Noah's hand found his. "Dad, those helicopters are so cool." Daniel looked where his son was pointing. Two MH-60 Blackhawks sat in various stages of maintenance, ground crews swarming them. His throat tightened. Those were his helicopters, his world, his language. And he was just a tourist now, just another passenger in worn-out boots watching from the outside. They filed into the terminal. Basic functional. Metal chairs, vending machines, windows overlooking the flight line. Victoria claimed a prime spot immediately, near the outlets, creating a perimeter with her luggage and laptop. Broadcasting importance. Daniel found a quiet corner where Noah could sit without bothering anyone, where he could keep his back to the wall and watch the world he used to know move forward without him. Noah pulled out a small notebook and began drawing. Helicopters mostly, the same ones visible through the window. Daniel sat beside him, watching his son create, listening to the imaginary missions where good guys always won and nobody judged you by your jacket or your paycheck or your worthiness to occupy space. An hour passed, then 90 minutes. Victoria's phone calls increased in volume and frequency. She'd positioned herself as the unofficial spokesperson for passenger grievances, demanding updates from personnel who had no authority to give them, threatening legal action, making everyone uncomfortable with her sense of entitlement. Daniel watched this performance with detachment. He'd seen actual emergencies, real crises where calm and competence mattered more than volume. Victoria was terrified beneath the anger, terrified of being powerless, of being subject to forces beyond her control. Wealth couldn't fix a broken airplane. Status couldn't override physics. So she did what people like her always did, tried to buy her way out with noise and indignation. Noah had abandoned his notebook for the windows, pressing his hands against glass, watching a Black Hawk crew work with choreographed precision. Daniel stood beside his son, couldn't help himself. His attention was captured by details he couldn't stop cataloging. The rotor alignment, the weapons check, the crew chief's hand signals. Every movement purposeful, every step part of a larger dance he knew by heart. "That's the coolest helicopter ever, Dad." Daniel smiled despite everything. "Yeah, buddy, it really is." Behind them, Victoria's latest phone call was reaching crescendo. "I don't care about protocol. I have a meeting with Pentagon procurement I cannot miss. Surely someone here has authority to arrange alternative transportation." She'd cornered a young ensign, using the full force of her corporate authority on someone who probably made $30,000 a year. The ensign maintained professional composure. "Ma'am, I understand your frustration, but we need to follow proper procedures." "Do you know who I am?" Victoria's voice cut through the terminal. "My company supplies half the tactical equipment your Navy uses. I could make one phone call, and—" She stopped mid-sentence. Daniel felt it before he saw it. That shift in the air, that change in energy. 3 men had entered the terminal. Tactical gear, calm confidence, the bearing of people who'd been trained to handle crisis. Daniel felt himself straighten involuntarily. Muscle memory. He knew these men. Not individually, but collectively. The culture, the training, the unspoken language. Navy SEALs. The lead operator, a senior chief with gray threading his dark hair, scanned the terminal with eyes trained to assess threats and opportunities in milliseconds. His gaze passed over Victoria, over the complaining passengers, over the young ensign, and stopped dead on Daniel. Something flickered in the senior chief's expression. Recognition. But that was impossible. Daniel didn't know him, hadn't served with him. Then the senior chief's eyes dropped to Daniel's wrist, to the titanium bracelet that had shifted during the wait. Just enough visible. Just enough to read the engraving. Shadow 1. The senior chief's entire demeanor transformed. He said something quick to his companions. Then he walked directly toward Daniel with purpose. Daniel felt his heart rate spike. That old fight-or-flight response. The one that never quite went away. Noah sensed the shift, moved closer to his father. Protective instinct. The senior chief stopped at respectful distance. His eyes moved from the titanium bracelet to Daniel's face and back. When he spoke, his voice carried respect that made the entire terminal go quiet. "Sir, I don't mean to intrude, but that call sign on your wrist, is it yours, or are you wearing someone's memorial band?" The question hung in the air. Respectful, direct, giving Daniel the option to deflect. Around them, the terminal had gone silent. Victoria had stopped mid-complaint. The young ensign was staring. Daniel's throat felt like sandpaper. He hadn't claimed that identity aloud in 3 years. Hadn't said those words since the day they handed him discharge papers and told him broken men couldn't be trusted with classified operations. But something about this moment, standing on military ground with his son beside him and that Black Hawk visible through the window, made lying feel like the worst kind of betrayal. His voice came out rough, scarred by disuse. "It's mine." 2 words, simple, true. Shadow 1. The senior chief's face transformed. Respect, awe, something deeper. He straightened to attention and saluted. Daniel's hand came up slowly. 3 years of civilian life fought against 15 years of training. But training won. His return salute was automatic, precise. Muscle memory taking over where conscious thought faltered. The terminal had become something else entirely. No longer civilian space, but military territory. Governed by different rules. Operating on a frequency most of the passengers couldn't hear, but could definitely feel. The senior chief held his salute for a long moment before lowering his hand. His 2 companions had moved closer, now casual demeanor evaporating like morning fog. "Sir, it's an honor." The senior chief's voice carried weight. "I'm Senior Chief Marcus Webb. This is Chief Petty Officer Rodriguez and Petty Officer First Class Chen." The other 2 operators nodded. Rodriguez looked like he was seeing a legend step out of a history book. Chen had gone very still, his eyes sharp with recognition. "I was on your last extraction, sir." Webb's voice cracked slightly. "Kandahar province, the compound that went sideways." Daniel felt the blood drain from his face. Kandahar. The mission that ended everything. "You carried 2 of us out." Webb continued. 3 miles through hostile territory. Hernandez and me. Everyone said it was impossible. You did it anyway." The memories crashed back. The weight of 2 wounded men. The burning in his legs. Sarah's voice in his earpiece guiding him through the darkness. The helicopter that finally appeared when he'd given up hope. "Hernandez didn't make it," Daniel said quietly. "He died on the bird. But I'm standing here because of you, sir." Webb's jaw tightened. "My daughter just turned 6. She exists because you refused to leave me behind." Daniel didn't know what to say. Didn't know how to process this collision between the man he'd been and the man he'd become. Noah tugged at his sleeve. "Dad, what's happening?" Daniel looked down at his son. Those gray eyes. Sarah's eyes. Confused and scared and searching for answers. These men. They knew me. A long time ago. "Knew you how?" Webb crouched to Noah's level. His weathered face softened. "Your dad saved my life, son. He's a hero." Noah's brow furrowed. "My dad fixes cars. He does that too." Webb smiled. "But before that, he was one of the best operators this country ever produced. Call sign Shadow 1. Your mom was Shadow 2. The mention of Sarah hit Daniel like a fist to the chest. Noah's eyes went wide. "You knew my mom." "I knew of her son. Everyone did. Commander Sarah Reeves, first female operator in unit history. She rewrote the book on tactical extraction. Half the protocols we use today, she developed. She was brave. The bravest." Webb looked at Daniel. Sir, the whole team would want to meet you. Command 2. Would you and your son come to the compound just for a visit? The guys would be honored. Daniel hesitated. The compound. SEAL territory. The world he'd been forced to leave. I don't know if that's... Please, Dad. Noah's voice was urgent. I want to see where Mom worked. Where you worked. Those words. That simple request from a boy who'd never really known what his parents had been. What they'd sacrificed. Daniel looked at the terminal. At the passengers who'd dismissed him. At Victoria still frozen in place, phone hanging forgotten at her side. Then he looked at his son. Okay, buddy, let's go see. Webb's face broke into a grin. Outstanding, sir. Rodriguez radio ahead. Tell them Shadow 1 is on deck. Rodriguez pulled out his comm device, spoke quickly into it. Daniel caught fragments. Shadow 1. Yes, the Shadow 1. 7-year-old son. Copy that. 8. Noah corrected. I'm 8. Rodriguez smiled. 8-year-old son. My apologies, sir. They moved toward the exit. Daniel was aware of every eye in the terminal following them. The businessman who'd chuckled at Victoria's complaints. The families who'd ignored him. The flight attendants who'd given him plastic instead of glass. All of them watching. All of them recalculating. Victoria stepped forward. Her voice had lost its edge entirely. Wait. I don't understand. Who is he? Webb turned. His expression was polite but cold. Ma'am, that man is Commander Daniel Reeves. He has more confirmed missions than anyone in SEAL history. He's received every commendation the military offers, most of them classified. And he spent the last 3 hours sitting next to you while you complained about his clothes. Victoria's face went pale. I didn't know. No, ma'am, you didn't. Webb turned back to Daniel. This way, sir. They walked out into the California sun. Daniel felt the heat, but more than that, he felt the weight lifting. 3 years of invisibility. 3 years of being dismissed and overlooked and judged. And now here in this place, he was seen again. A military vehicle waited outside. Webb held the door. It's about a 10-minute drive, sir. The team is assembling. Daniel helped Noah into the vehicle, then climbed in himself. The seats were worn functional. Military standard. He'd spent thousands of hours in vehicles exactly like this. Chen drove. Rodriguez rode shotgun. Webb sat across from Daniel and Noah. Sir, if I may ask. Webb's voice was careful. What happened after Kandahar? You just disappeared. Daniel looked out the window. The base sliding past. Buildings he recognized. Paths he'd walked. Sarah's helicopter went down 6 weeks after Kandahar. Equipment failure. She was running extraction for another team. Webb's face tightened. I heard about that, sir. I'm sorry. I didn't know it was her. Nobody did. Classified mission. Classified death. Daniel's voice was flat. I fell apart after. PTSD. Panic attacks. The Navy decided I was a liability. Medical discharge. Honorable but permanent. That's... Webb shook his head. That's not right, sir. It was the right call. I couldn't function. Couldn't sleep without seeing her face. Couldn't look at a helicopter without hearing the crash. Daniel paused. Still can't some days. Noah had been listening quietly. Now he spoke up. Dad has nightmares sometimes. Bad ones. He yells Mom's name. Daniel's throat closed. He hadn't known Noah heard that. I'm sorry, buddy. I didn't mean to scare you. You don't scare me, Dad. Noah's voice was matter of fact. You just make me sad. Because you're sad. The vehicle went quiet. 4 grown men silenced by the simple truth of an 8-year-old. Webb cleared his throat. Sir, for what it's worth, what you went through. We've all been there. Maybe not exactly the same, but close enough. It doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. Doesn't feel human, Daniel said. Feels like failure. With respect, Sir, failure is a guy who walks away from his kid. Failure is a guy who gives up. You're sitting here with your son showing up every day. That's not failure. That's the hardest mission there is. They passed through a security checkpoint. Guards waved them through without stopping. Sir, Rodriguez turned from the front seat. I heard about you at Bud's. The instructors used your missions as case studies. The Somalia extraction, the Syria compound, the thing in Pakistan that's still classified. That was a long time ago. Excellence doesn't expire, sir. The vehicle stopped outside a building Daniel recognized. The team compound, where operators trained, briefed, prepared for missions that most of the world would never know about. We're here. Webb opened the door. Fair warning, sir. Word travels fast. There might be a few people waiting. Daniel stepped out. A few people. There were at least 50 operators standing in formation outside the building. Different teams, different ranks, all in tactical gear or duty uniforms. All standing at attention. Daniel's breath caught. What is this? This is respect, sir. Webb's voice was thick. This is what you earned. A voice called out. Shadow 1 on deck. 50 voices responded in unison. Hoo-yah! The sound hit Daniel like a physical force. That call, that response, the language of his people, the tribe he'd been exiled from. Noah gripped his hand tighter. Dad, they're all looking at you. I know, buddy. Are they your friends? They're family, kind of. A man broke from the formation, older silver-haired command presence radiating from every step. Captain's insignia, the compound commander. Commander Reeves, his voice carried across the courtyard. I'm Captain William Morrison. Welcome back to Coronado. Daniel straightened instinctively. Sir, I'm not sure I deserve this reception. Let me be the judge of that. Morrison's eyes were sharp but kind. I've read every mission report you ever filed, studied your tactical decisions at the War College. You're required reading commander. Required. I'm not a commander anymore, sir. Just a civilian. Rank isn't given by paperwork, son. It's earned by blood and sacrifice. You'll always be Commander Reeves here. Morrison looked down at Noah. And this must be the young man I've heard about. You've got your mother's eyes. Noah stood a little straighter. You knew my mom. I met her once. Toughest operator I ever saw, male or female. She made history. Morrison paused. And she loved you very much. Your father, too. I know. Noah's voice was small but certain. She still loves us. Dad says love doesn't need altitude. Morrison's expression shifted. Something raw flickered across his weathered face. Your dad's a wise man. He looked at Daniel. Would you walk with me, Commander? There's something I'd like to show you. Your son is welcome to come along. Lead the way, sir. They walked into the compound. Operators parted to let them through. Some nodded, some saluted. All of them watching with something that looked like reverence. Daniel felt exposed. Raw, like skin that had been hidden under bandages for years was suddenly open to air. I know what you're feeling. Morrison spoke quietly for Daniel's ears only. I felt it when I came back from my own dark period. Vietnam. Different war, same demons. How did you get past it, sir? I didn't. I learned to carry it. Morrison paused outside a door. I learned that broken isn't the same as useless, that ending one chapter doesn't mean the book is finished. He pushed open the door. Daniel stepped through and stopped breathing. It was a memorial room, walls covered with photographs, plaques, names. Operators who'd given everything. The cost of freedom measured in faces and dates and missions that would never be declassified. And there, centered on the far wall, was Sarah. Her official photograph. That smile he'd fallen in love with. Those eyes that Noah had inherited. Commander Sarah Reeves. Shadow 2. The inscription read, First to fight, last to leave. Forever remembered. Dad! Noah's whisper was barely audible. That's Mom. Daniel couldn't speak, couldn't move, could barely stand, as the grief he'd spent 3 years burying surged back with suffocating force. His legs buckled. Morrison caught him, held him steady. Easy, Commander. Easy. I can't do this. Yes, you can. Because your son is watching. And he needs to see that grief doesn't make you weak. It makes you real. Daniel forced himself upright, forced himself to look at Sarah's face, forced himself to breathe through the agony clawing at his chest. Noah had moved closer to the wall. His small hand reached up, touched the frame. Hi, Mom. His voice was conversational, normal, the way children talk to the dead without fear. I'm really big now. Dad takes good care of me. He's sad a lot, but he never stops trying. I think you'd be proud of him. Daniel's tears fell freely. He didn't try to hide them. I think you'd be proud of me too, Noah continued. I got an A on my math test last week, and I can swim 2 whole laps without stopping. And I still have your coin, the lucky one. I keep it safe just like you asked. The boy reached into his pocket, pulled out the challenge coin, held it up so Sarah could see. See, right here, safe. Daniel moved to his son's side, put his hand on Noah's shoulder. Together they stood before Sarah's photograph. Father and son, the remnants of a family that had once been whole. I'm sorry. Daniel's voice cracked. I'm sorry I couldn't save you. I'm sorry I fell apart. I'm sorry I haven't been the man you married. Dad. Noah looked up at him. You're exactly the man Mom married. You just got hurt. Getting hurt doesn't change who you are. When did you get so smart? I learned from Mom. She told me once that brave people aren't the ones who never get scared. They're the ones who get scared and do the hard thing anyway. Noah paused. You do hard things every day, Dad. You're the bravest person I know. Daniel pulled his son into a hug, held him tight while the tears fell and the grief washed through, and something that felt like healing began to take root. Morrison had stepped back, giving them space. But he was still there, still watching. When Daniel finally released Noah, Morrison spoke. Commander, I have a proposition for you. Daniel wiped his face. Sir, we're running a new training cycle. Young operators who've never seen real combat. They need to learn from someone who's been in the fire, someone who knows what it's really like. I can't operate anymore, sir. Medical discharge. I'm not asking you to operate. I'm asking you to teach. Morrison's eyes were steady. Civilian consultant position. Part-time flexible schedule. You'd work with the training cadre, develop tactical scenarios, share your experience. Sir, I fix cars for $14 an hour. I'm not sure I'm qualified to... You're the most qualified person I've ever met. Morrison cut him off. Qualifications aren't about degrees or certifications. They're about what you've lived through and what you've learned. You have knowledge that can't be taught in a classroom. Knowledge that can save lives. I have a son. I can't just... The schedule works around your responsibilities. We understand that family comes first. Morrison paused. The pay is $85 an hour. 20 hours a week to start. More if you want it. Daniel did the math automatically. 85 times 20. $1,700 a week. Nearly $7,000 a month. More than he'd made in 3 months at the auto shop. Sir, He couldn't find words. You don't have to decide now. Think about it. Talk to your son. Morrison handed him a card. But Commander, the Navy took something from you. Maybe this is a way to take something back. Daniel stared at the card. His hands were shaking. Dad? Noah's voice was excited. You could teach people to be heroes, like you and Mom. Buddy, I'm not a hero. I'm just... You saved Senior Chief Webb's life. He said so. His daughter exists because of you. Noah's logic was simple and devastating. "That sounds like a hero to me." Morrison smiled. "Smart kid. He gets that from his mother." They left the memorial room, walked back through the compound. The operators had dispersed to their duties, but many stopped to shake Daniel's hand to thank him, to share a memory of a mission or a training exercise or something they'd heard about Shadow 1. Each interaction was another thread, another connection, another reminder that he hadn't been forgotten, that his sacrifice had mattered, that the man he'd been wasn't erased by the man he'd become. Webb met them outside. "Sir, the aircraft has been cleared. They're ready to resume the flight to San Diego." "Thank you, Senior Chief." "Thank you, sir, for coming here, for letting the guys see you." Webb hesitated. "And, sir, whatever you decide about the captain's offer, we'd be honored to have you back, in any capacity." Daniel shook his hand. "Take care of yourself, Webb. Take care of that daughter." "Every day, sir, because of you." The drive back to the terminal was quiet. Noah had fallen asleep against Daniel's shoulder, exhausted by the emotion of the day. Daniel watched the base slide past outside the window. The helicopter pads, the training facilities, the buildings where he'd spent the best years of his life. This was his world, had been his world. Maybe it could be again. Rodriguez and Chen walked them into the terminal. The other passengers had reboarded already. A flight attendant was waiting at the gate. "Mr. Reeves, we're ready for you and your son." Mr. Reeves. Not sir, not commander. But that was okay. He didn't need titles anymore. He knew who he was, what he'd done, what he was worth. "Thank you." He carried Noah onto the plane. The boy barely stirred as Daniel buckled him into seat 12F. Victoria was already in 12E. She looked up as Daniel settled into his seat. Her expression was completely different now. The contempt was gone. The superiority was gone. In its place was something that might have been shame. "Mr. Reeves." Her voice was quiet. "I owe you an apology." "Yes, you do." She flinched at his directness. "I judged you based on superficial things, your clothes, your circumstances. I was cruel to you and your son without cause. I was wrong. You were. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that I see things differently now." Daniel was silent for a long moment, thinking about anger and grace, about the walls people built and the bridges they burned. "You know what bothers me most?" His voice was calm but firm. "Not that you were rude to me. I'm used to that. But you were unkind to my son. You made an 8-year-old boy feel unwelcome and ashamed. You did it casually because in your world, people like us don't matter enough to consider." Victoria's face crumpled. "I know. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." Sorry is a start, but words are easy. Change is hard. Daniel looked at her directly. "The question is whether seeing me saluted will change how you treat the next person in worn clothes. Or if you'll just file this away as a special case and go back to judging people by their bank accounts." I don't know." Her honesty was surprising. "I've spent my whole life measuring worth by achievement, by wealth, by status. I don't know how to see things differently. You start by looking, actually looking at people, not their clothes or their jobs or their seats on the airplane. You look at their eyes, their hands, the way they treat their children." Daniel paused. "Everyone has a story. Most of them are harder than yours." Victoria was quiet, absorbing his words, processing something that might have been the beginning of understanding. "My company supplies equipment to the military." Her voice was small. "I've never thought about the people who use it. They've always just been contracts, numbers. Those contracts are people. Sons and daughters, husbands and wives, parents who want to come home to their kids." Daniel's jaw tightened. "My wife died because of equipment failure. A manufacturer cut corners to improve profit margins. The minimum specifications weren't enough." Victoria's face went pale. "I didn't know." "No, you didn't." Daniel turned to look out the window. But now you do. The engine started. The plane began to taxi. Noah stirred against Daniel's shoulder. The challenge coin was clutched in his small fist. Sarah's coin. Sarah's boy. Their boy. Dad? Noah's voice was sleepy. Are we going home? Yeah, buddy, we're going home. I liked seeing where you and Mom worked. The people were nice? They were. Are you going to teach them? Like the captain asked? Daniel thought about the offer, the money, the purpose, the chance to matter again. I think I might, buddy. Would that be okay with you? That would be awesome. Noah's eyes were closing again. Mom would be proud. You think so? I know so. A small smile crossed his son's face. She told me once. She said Daddy was going to do great things, even when he didn't believe it himself. The plane lifted off, California falling away below them, San Diego waiting ahead. Daniel held his son and felt something shift inside him. A door opening, a light coming on in a room that had been dark for 3 years. He wasn't the same man who'd boarded this flight in Chicago. The man who'd accepted invisibility as his due, who'd let strangers dismiss him without complaint, who'd believed his best days were behind him. That man was gone. In his place was someone new, someone who'd been reminded of his worth, someone who'd seen his sacrifice honored, someone who'd been offered a chance to matter again. Shadow 1. Still standing, still fighting, just in different ways. Victoria sat in her seat, staring at nothing. Whatever she was thinking, whatever she was feeling, Daniel didn't know. But something had cracked in her. He'd seen it. A fissure in the armor she wore. A glimpse of the human being underneath. Maybe she'd change. Maybe she wouldn't. That was her choice. Daniel had made his. The titanium bracelet caught the light from the window. The inscription visible now. Not hidden under his sleeve. Not something to be ashamed of. Shadow 1. He'd spent 3 years running from that name, hiding from what it meant, believing he'd lost the right to claim it. But you couldn't run from yourself forever. Eventually, you had to stop, to turn around, to face whatever was chasing you. Daniel had stopped running, and what he found waiting wasn't the failure he'd expected. It was a legacy, a history, a life that had mattered even if it had ended too soon. Sarah had believed in him, even when he couldn't believe in himself. Maybe it was time to prove her right. The flight landed in San Diego without incident. Daniel carried Noah through the terminal, his son still groggy from sleep, the challenge coin clutched tight in his small fist. Their apartment was 40 minutes from the airport, a one-bedroom in a complex that had seen better days. Water stains on the ceiling, heat that worked when it felt like it, furniture from Goodwill and yard sales, home. Daniel unlocked the door, carried Noah to the bedroom they shared, laid him on the bed. The boy barely stirred as Daniel pulled off his shoes and covered him with a blanket. "Love you, buddy," Daniel whispered. "Love you too, Dad." Noah's voice was thick with sleep. Today was a good day. Yeah, it was. Daniel walked to the kitchen, opened the refrigerator, stared at the half-empty shelves. Milk, some leftover rice, a package of hot dogs that was probably past its date. He pulled out his phone, looked at the card Captain Morrison had given him. $85 an hour, 20 hours a week. He did the math again. $1,700 a week, $6,800 a month. More than he'd made in 3 months at Murphy's Auto. His thumb hovered over the number. What if they changed their minds? What if they realized he wasn't the man they remembered? What if he had a panic attack during training and proved he was exactly the liability the Navy said he was? The phone rang in his hand. Unknown number, San Diego area code. Hello. Commander Reeves, this is Captain Morrison. I hope I'm not calling too late. Daniel's heart hammered. No, sir. Not at all. I wanted to follow up on our conversation. I know I said to take your time, but I have a situation. We're starting a new training cycle Monday. Young operators who've never seen combat. I could use someone with your experience in the room. Monday. 4 days away. Sir, I'm not asking for a commitment. Just come in Monday. Observe. See how it feels. If it's not right, no hard feelings. But I think you need to see this before you decide. Daniel looked at the card in his hand, at the phone pressed to his ear, at the apartment that represented everything he'd become. What time? 0800. I'll have credentials waiting at the main gate. I'll be there, sir. Outstanding. And Commander, bring your son if you need to. We have childcare on base. The line went dead. Daniel stood in his kitchen for a long time, phone in one hand, card in the other, the weight of decision pressing down on his shoulders. Then he walked to the bedroom, sat on the edge of the bed beside his sleeping son. Hey buddy, wake up for a second. Noah stirred, opened his eyes. What's wrong, Dad? Nothing's wrong. I just talked to Captain Morrison. He wants me to come to the base Monday, to see if I want to teach. Noah sat up, suddenly alert. Are you going to? I don't know. I'm scared, buddy. What if I'm not good enough anymore? You're always good enough. Noah's voice was certain, absolute. You're my dad. Daniel felt tears prick his eyes. What if I mess up? Then you try again. That's what you always tell me. When did you get so smart? I told you. I learned from Mom. Noah yawned. Go to the base, Dad. See if you like it. I'll be okay. You sure? I'm sure. Noah lay back down. Mom would want you to try. She always said trying is the bravest thing. Daniel leaned down, kissed his son's forehead. I love you, Noah. Love you too, Dad. Now let me sleep. The weekend passed slowly. Daniel called Murphy's Auto, explained he needed Monday off. His boss wasn't happy, but agreed. One day. Don't make it a habit. He spent Saturday with Noah at the park, throwing a football, eating ice cream, pretending everything was normal while his mind raced with possibilities and fears. Sunday night he couldn't sleep. He lay in bed staring at the ceiling, running through scenarios. What would he say? How would he act? Would he remember anything useful, or had 3 years of changing oil and rotating tires erased everything he'd learned? At 3 a.m., he gave up on sleep, made coffee, sat at the kitchen table with his laptop searching for information about current SEAL training protocols. Some things had changed. New equipment, new techniques, new threats. But the fundamentals were the same. Physical conditioning, mental toughness, tactical decision-making. He knew those fundamentals, had lived them, had taught them informally to his own operators years ago. Maybe he could do this. Maybe. Monday morning came too fast. Daniel dropped Noah at school, then drove to Coronado. The same route from the emergency landing, but different now. Intentional. Chosen. The guard at the main gate checked his ID against a list. Commander Reeves. Welcome back, sir. Captain Morrison is expecting you. Welcome back. 2 words that hit harder than they should have. He parked in the visitor lot, walked toward the training compound. Every step felt heavier than the last, like the ground was trying to hold him back. Senior Chief Webb was waiting outside. Commander, good to see you again. Just Daniel is fine, Senior Chief. I'm not active anymore. With respect, sir, you'll always be commander to us. Webb gestured toward the building. Captain Morrison is inside. The training class is assembling now. Daniel followed him through doors that felt familiar and foreign at the same time. Down corridors he'd walked 100 times before. Past rooms where he'd briefed missions, debriefed failures, celebrated victories. The training room was large, utilitarian. 20 young men sat in rows, attention fixed on a screen, displaying mission parameters. They looked so young, barely older than boys, full of confidence and energy and the certainty that came from never having been tested. Daniel had been like them once, a lifetime ago. Captain Morrison stood at the front. He saw Daniel enter and nodded. Gentlemen, we have a guest observer today, Commander Daniel Reeves, call sign Shadow 1. Some of you may have studied his missions. All of you have benefited from his tactical innovations. 20 heads turned. 20 pairs of eyes assessed him. Daniel saw their confusion. The worn clothes, the calloused hands, the appearance that didn't match the legend they'd been told about. One of the young operators raised his hand. Sir, is it true you completed the Kandahar extraction with 2 wounded operators over 3 miles of hostile territory? Daniel's throat tightened. Yes. How? One step at a time, and refusing to die. A ripple of respect passed through the room. Commander Reeves is considering a consulting position with us. Morrison continued. Today he's observing, learning how we do things now, but I expect you to treat him with the respect his service deserves. Questions? Silence. Good. Let's begin. Daniel took a seat at the back of the room, watched as Morrison walked the young operators through a tactical scenario. Urban environment, multiple hostiles, civilian presence. He listened to their responses, their reasoning, their mistakes. And he couldn't help himself. That entry point is wrong. The words were out before he could stop them. The room went silent. Morrison turned. Commander. Daniel stood, walked to the front, pointed at the screen. This entry point. You're teaching them to breach here because it provides cover from the west. But you're not accounting for the sight lines from the third-floor windows. Any hostile positioned there has a clear shot at the breach team. Morrison's eyebrows rose. What would you recommend? Secondary approach from the south, through this alley. Daniel traced the route on the screen. It's longer, but it eliminates the exposure. You lose 30 seconds, but gain survivability. One of the young operators spoke up. Sir, the manual says the western approach is optimal. The manual was written by people who've never been shot at. Daniel's voice was sharper than he intended. I've been shot at. In this exact type of scenario. The western approach got 2 of my men wounded. The southern approach got everyone home. Silence. Morrison was smiling. That, gentlemen, is why experience matters. Commander, would you like to continue the briefing? Daniel hesitated, then nodded. If you don't mind, sir. I insist. Daniel turned to face the young operators. 20 faces, 20 futures, 20 lives that might depend on what he taught them. The fear was still there, the doubt, the voice in his head that said he wasn't good enough anymore. But underneath it, something else was stirring. Purpose, certainty, the knowledge that he had something valuable to offer. Forget what the manual says. His voice steadied. Manuals are guidelines. Combat is chaos. Your job isn't to follow procedures. Your job is to adapt, survive, and bring everyone home. Everything else is secondary. He taught for 3 hours, broke down scenarios, explained decision points, shared stories from his own missions, the successes and the failures, the moments when everything went right, and the moments when it all fell apart. The young operators listened with an intensity that surprised him, asked questions, challenged assumptions, engaged with the material like their lives depended on it. Because they did. When the session ended, Morrison pulled Daniel aside. That was exceptional, Commander. Better than anything I've seen from our regular instructors. I just shared what I know. That's exactly what these men need. Knowledge from someone who's lived it. Morrison paused. I'm not going to pressure you, but I hope you'll consider my offer seriously. We need you here, Daniel. The Navy owes you a debt. This is a way to start repaying it. Daniel looked at the young operators filing out of the room. Some nodded to him as they passed. Others offered quick words of thanks. He thought about the auto shop, the $14 an hour, the customers who looked through him like he didn't exist. He thought about Noah, the bills that never stopped, the apartment with broken heat, the life he'd been barely surviving. And he thought about Sarah, what she would say, what she would want. I'll do it. Morrison extended his hand. "Welcome back, Commander." The paperwork took a week. Background checks, security clearances, contracts. Daniel signed everything with hands that only shook a little. His first official day was the following Monday. Noah came with him. The base child care center was bright and staffed by people who understood military families. Noah took one look at the other kids and the toys and the space to run, and his face lit up. "This is way better than Mrs. Henderson's house." Mrs. Henderson was the neighbor who watched Noah after school. She was kind, but overwhelmed her small apartment crowded with too many children and not enough attention. "You okay here, buddy?" "I'm great, Dad. Go teach people to be heroes." Daniel hugged his son, then walked to the training compound. The first month was hard, not the teaching. That came naturally, like a skill his body remembered even when his mind forgot. But being back in this world surrounded by everything he'd lost triggered demons he'd thought were buried. The panic attack came during week 3. He was running a scenario. Helicopter extraction under fire. The simulation was too realistic. The sounds, the chaos, the radio chatter. Sarah's voice in his head. Calm and professional. Even as her helicopter went down. Daniel's vision tunneled. His chest tightened. The room tilted. "Commander." One of the young operators stood up. "Sir, are you okay?" Daniel couldn't breathe. Couldn't speak. The walls were closing in, and his heart was trying to punch through his ribs, and he couldn't get air. "Get Senior Chief Webb." Someone was talking. "Now." Hands guided him to a chair. Someone put his head between his knees. Someone else was talking, but the words were underwater, garbled, meaningless. Then Webb's voice cut through. Calm. Authoritative. "Daniel, look at me. Eyes on me." Daniel forced his eyes to focus. Webb's face came into view. "Breathe with me. In for 4. Hold for 4. Out for 4. Can you do that?" Daniel tried. Failed. Tried again. "You're safe." Webb's voice was steady. "You're at Coronado. You're in the training room. There's no danger. Your brain is lying to you. Trust me, not it." Slowly, painfully, Daniel's breathing evened out. The tunnel vision receded. The panic released its grip. "There you go." Webb's hand was on his shoulder. "You're okay. Just a panic attack. They pass." The young operators were staring. Daniel felt shame wash over him, hot and suffocating. "I'm sorry." His voice was raw. "I'm sorry. I need to—" "You need to take a breath and let me handle this." Webb stood, turned to the class. "All of you listen up. What you just saw, that's PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. It happens to the best of us. Commander Reeves has more combat time than everyone in this room combined, and he still struggles. That's not weakness. That's the cost of service." The room was silent. "Any of you got a problem with that?" Webb's voice was sharp. "Any of you think less of the commander because his brain processes trauma differently than yours?" No one spoke. "Good. Because someday, some of you might be exactly where he is. And you're going to need people who understand, who don't judge, who help you through instead of pushing you away." Webb looked at Daniel. "That's what brothers do. That's what family does. Clear. Hoo-yah!" The response was unified, respectful. Daniel looked at the young faces, expecting judgment, finding none. "I'm sorry you had to see that." His voice was steadier now. "Don't be sorry, sir." One of the operators spoke up, a young man with intense eyes and a southern accent. "My dad was Army. He had attacks like that after his deployments. Scared me when I was a kid. But he taught me they don't define you. How you handle them does." "Your dad sounds like a wise man." "He was, sir. He passed 2 years ago. Heart attack." The young operator paused. "But he'd have liked you. You remind me of him." Daniel felt something loosen in his chest, something he'd been carrying for years. "Thank you for saying that. Thank you for being honest, sir. Most guys hide it, pretend they're fine, end up eating their gun because nobody knows they're struggling." The operator's jaw tightened. "My dad talked about it. Every time he felt it coming. That's the only reason he lasted as long as he did." The room had gone very quiet. Daniel looked at these young men. Boys, really. About to enter a world that would change them forever. About to carry burdens that would never fully lift. "This job will break you." His voice was soft but certain. "Not if. When. You'll see things no human should see. Do things no human should do. And you'll carry it for the rest of your lives." He paused. "Let the words settle. The question isn't whether you'll be broken. It's whether you'll let the breaking destroy you, or whether you'll find a way to keep going, to build something new from the pieces." He touched the titanium bracelet on his wrist. Shadow 1. "I was broken, am broken in some ways, but I'm still here, still teaching, still trying to make a difference." He looked at each of them in turn. "That's all any of us can do. Keep trying, keep showing up, even when it hurts, especially when it hurts." The session continued. Somehow, Daniel pushed through the lingering shakiness, the residual fear, the shame that kept whispering that he'd failed. When it was over, Morrison was waiting outside. "I heard what happened. I'm sorry, sir. I understand if you want to reconsider the arrangement." "Reconsider?" Morrison's eyebrows rose. "Daniel, what happened in there was the most valuable training those men have had. You showed them that struggle is normal, that seeking help is strength, that the toughest operators in the world still deal with this. I fell apart in front of them. You showed them you're human. Then you got back up and kept teaching." Morrison put a hand on Daniel's shoulder. "That's exactly the example they need. Not some invincible hero who never struggles. A real man who struggles and keeps going anyway." Daniel didn't know what to say. "I'm not firing you. I'm telling you to see the base counselor. Get support. Take care of yourself so you can take care of them. That's an order." "Yes, sir." The counselor was a civilian. Dr. Rachel Chen. Small, sharp-eyed, no nonsense. "Commander Reeves, I've been expecting you." "News travels fast." Captain Morrison called ahead. "He's worried about you." She gestured to a chair. "Sit. Let's talk." Daniel sat, felt exposed, vulnerable. All the things he'd been trained to never be. "I'm fine." "Of course you are. That's why you had a panic attack in front of 20 trainees." Her voice was dry. "Let's try again. How are you really?" Daniel was quiet for a long moment. "I'm not fine." The admission cost him something. "I'm terrified, every day, that I'm not good enough, that I'm going to fail, that everyone will see I'm just broken pieces held together with duct tape and stubbornness." "Go on." "My wife died 3 years ago. I fell apart. The Navy discharged me. I've been fixing cars and barely surviving ever since. And now I'm back here pretending I belong, waiting for everyone to realize I don't." Dr. Chen nodded slowly. "That's a lot of weight to carry." "I've been carrying it so long I forgot what it felt like to be light." "What would light feel like?" Daniel thought about the question. Really thought. Like I deserved to be here. Like my value wasn't buried with my wife. Like I'm more than just the broken thing that survived when she didn't. "You are more than that." Easy to say. Hard to believe, I know. Dr. Chen leaned forward. "But belief isn't required for action. You don't have to believe you belong here. You just have to keep showing up, keep teaching, keep trying. Eventually the belief catches up with the behavior. What if it doesn't? Then you keep showing up anyway. That's what courage is, not the absence of fear, the presence of action despite fear." Daniel left the session feeling raw, exposed, but also somehow lighter. The weeks passed. He taught. He struggled. He kept showing up. The panic attacks still came, but less frequently. And when they did, he knew what to do. Breathe. Ground himself. Ride it out. The young operator stopped being faces and became people. Jenkins, the southern kid who'd talked about his dad. Rodriguez, who asked too many questions and never took notes, but somehow remembered everything. Kowalski, the quiet one who Daniel suspected might be the most dangerous of them all. They learned from him, and he learned from them. That he wasn't finished. That broken didn't mean useless. That there were still ways to serve, even when the ways he'd known were gone. 8 weeks into his contract, Captain Morrison called him into his office. "Commander, I have news." "Sir." "The training class you've been working with, their assessment scores are the highest we've had in 5 years. Field evaluations show marked improvement in tactical decision-making. Command is impressed." Daniel felt warmth spread through his chest. The operators worked hard. They had an exceptional teacher. Morrison slid a folder across his desk. "I'm offering you a permanent position, full-time consultant. Benefits included, health insurance for you and your son." Daniel opened the folder, stared at the numbers. 90,000 a year. Health coverage. Retirement contributions. Job security. "Sir, I don't know what to say." "Say yes." Morrison's eyes were kind. "You've earned this, Daniel. Every bit of it." Daniel thought about the auto shop, the $14 an hour, the customers who looked through him. He thought about Noah, the doctor's visits they'd skipped because they couldn't afford them, the inhaler that cost more than groceries, the future that had seemed so limited. "Yes, sir, I accept." "Outstanding." Morrison stood, extended his hand. "Welcome to the team, Commander. Officially." Daniel shook his hand, felt something settle into place inside him. Not healing exactly, but the beginning of it. The first real step toward becoming whole again. That evening he picked Noah up from childcare. His son came running, face bright with excitement. "Dad, did you see the helicopters today? They were doing drills and they were so loud and so cool." "I saw them, buddy." "Did you teach your students good stuff?" "I tried." "I bet you were great." Noah grabbed his hand as they walked to the car. "Mrs. Patterson says you're a hero. She says her husband used to talk about Shadow 1 all the time before he retired." Daniel stopped walking. "Mrs. Patterson's husband was a SEAL." "Yeah, he said you saved his team once, in a place he couldn't tell her about." Noah looked up at him. "You saved a lot of people, didn't you, Dad?" Daniel crouched to his son's level, looked into those gray eyes, Sarah's eyes. "I tried to save everyone I could, but I couldn't save everyone. Not even the one who mattered most." Noah's small hand touched Daniel's face. "You couldn't save Mom, but you saved me. Every day you save me. That matters too." Daniel pulled his son into a hug, held him tight while the evening air cooled around them and the sounds of the bass faded into background noise. "I got a new job, buddy. A permanent one. More money. Better hours. Benefits." Noah pulled back. "Does that mean we can get a place with heat that works?" Daniel laughed. Actually laughed. The first real laugh in months. "Yeah, buddy, I think it does." They drove home. But it didn't feel like driving toward the cramped apartment anymore. It felt like driving toward something new, something better. Daniel looked at the titanium bracelet on his wrist. Shadow 1. He wasn't the man who'd worn that name in combat. That man was gone, buried under grief and trauma and 3 years of survival. But maybe he was becoming someone new, someone who could carry the name without being crushed by it, someone who could honor the past while building a future, someone Sarah would be proud of. The thought didn't hurt as much as it used to, and that more than anything felt like progress. The new apartment had heat that worked. Daniel stood in the doorway watching Noah run from room to room, touching everything, like he couldn't believe it was real. 2 bedrooms. A kitchen with appliances that looked like they'd been manufactured in this decade. Windows that actually closed all the way. Dad, I have my own room. You do, buddy. With a door that closes. That's generally how rooms work. Noah launched himself at Daniel's arms, wrapping tight around his waist. This is the best day ever. Daniel hugged his son back, feeling the weight of 3 years lift just a little more. They'd moved in over the weekend with help from Webb and Rodriguez and a handful of other operators who'd shown up without being asked. Military family. That's what they'd called it. Family takes care of its own. The rent was $1,200 a month, a number that would have been impossible 6 months ago. Now it was manageable, comfortable even. Can we get a dog? Daniel laughed. Let's start with keeping the plants alive. We don't have any plants. Exactly my point. Noah's school was better in this neighborhood. Higher test scores, more resources. Kids whose parents cared enough to show up. Daniel had worried about the transition about Noah being the new kid again, but his son had adapted with the resilience that constantly amazed him. There's a girl in my class named Maya, Noah reported after his first week. Her mom is a nurse. She's really nice. The girl or the mom? Both. Maya says her mom is single like you. Daniel raised an eyebrow. Are you trying to set me up? What's set up mean? Never mind. But he filed the information away. Not because he was ready, but because maybe someday he might be. The months passed in a rhythm that felt almost like healing. Daniel taught 5 days a week at Coronado. Came home to Noah every evening. Spent weekends building the kind of life he'd stopped believing was possible. The panic attacks still came occasionally, but less frequently. And when they did, he knew how to handle them. Breathe through it, ground yourself, ride it out. Dr. Chen helped. Their weekly sessions had become something Daniel looked forward to, not dreaded. A space where he could be honest about the darkness without judgment. You're making progress, she told him one afternoon. Real progress. It doesn't feel like progress. It feels like treading water. That's what progress feels like when you've been drowning. Treading water is a victory. The training classes rotated. New faces every few months. Jenkins and Rodriguez and Kowalski graduated to active duty, replaced by another group of young men who needed to learn the same lessons. Daniel taught them all. The tactics, the decision-making, the survival skills that might bring them home. But more than that, he taught them about the cost. About what this life would take from them. About the importance of finding help when the weight got too heavy. You're not just training operators, Morrison told him during a quarterly review. You're changing the culture. These men are more open about mental health than any class we've had. That starts with you. I just tell them the truth. The truth is rare in this business. That's why it matters. In March, Daniel got a call from a number he didn't recognize. Commander Reeves. This is Victoria Hartley. The name hit him like cold water. The woman from the airplane. The one who'd looked at him like he was something dirty she'd stepped in. Ms. Hartley, I wasn't sure you'd take my call. Neither was I. A pause. I deserve that. What do you want? I'm in San Diego for business. I was hoping we could meet. There's something I'd like to discuss with you. Every instinct told him to say no, to hang up and forget she existed, but something in her voice made him hesitate, a humility that hadn't been there before. Where? They met at a coffee shop near the base. Daniel arrived, first ordered black coffee, took a seat where he could watch the door. Victoria walked in 10 minutes later. She looked different. Still polished, still expensive, but something had shifted. The armor she'd worn on the airplane was gone. Or at least cracked. She spotted him, walked over, didn't sit immediately. Thank you for meeting me. You said you had something to discuss. I do. She sat across from him, folded her hands on the table. I've been doing a lot of thinking since that flight, about the things you said, about the way I treated you and your son. And you were right. About everything. She took a breath. I've spent my entire career treating military personnel like line items, budget considerations, cost-benefit analyses. I never thought about them as people, as parents and spouses and children who might not come home. Daniel said nothing, waited. After our conversation, I started looking into equipment failures, the ones that led to casualties. I found patterns. Corners cut, specifications reduced to improve margins. Her voice cracked. I found the helicopter that killed your wife. Daniel's coffee cup stopped halfway to his mouth. It was one of our contracts. Triton Defense supplied the components. The failure was a manufacturing defect we knew about, but didn't report because fixing it would have cost $2 million. Victoria's eyes were wet. $2 million. That's what your wife's life was worth to my company. The rage came fast and hot. Daniel's hands clenched on the table. His vision narrowed to a single point. Why are you telling me this? Because you deserve to know, and because I'm trying to fix it. Victoria pulled a folder from her bag, slid it across the table. I've filed a report with the Department of Defense, full disclosure of every defect we've concealed over the past decade. I've recommended recalls on affected equipment, and I've resigned as CEO. Daniel stared at the folder, didn't touch it. You resigned. I couldn't lead a company that values profit over lives. Not anymore. Not after meeting you. She wiped her eyes. I know this doesn't bring her back. I know it doesn't fix anything. But I needed you to know that your words mattered. That you changed something. I didn't change anything. You made a choice. A choice I wouldn't have made if I hadn't sat next to you on that airplane. If I hadn't seen those SEALs salute you. If I hadn't realized that the man I'd been dismissing was worth more than everyone in my boardroom combined. Daniel was quiet for a long moment, processing, trying to find the anger that should have been there, finding something more complicated instead. My wife's name was Sarah. I know, I looked her up. She was remarkable. She was everything. I'm sorry I contributed to taking her from you. From your son. Victoria's voice was barely a whisper. I don't expect forgiveness. I just needed you to know that I'm trying to be better, that your words about looking at people really looking at them, I hear them every day now. Daniel picked up the folder, opened it. Pages of technical reports, defect analyses, casualty correlations, evidence of systemic negligence that had cost lives, including Sarah's. What happens now? Department of Defense is launching an investigation. Criminal charges are possible for some executives. The company will probably face massive fines, maybe bankruptcy. Victoria shrugged. I'll probably be called to testify. I'm cooperating fully. And you? I don't know. I have enough money to never work again, but I don't want to just disappear. I want to do something that matters. She hesitated. I was thinking about starting a foundation. Veteran support services, mental health resources, help for families who've lost someone to equipment failures. Daniel studied her face, looking for deception, finding none. You're serious. I've never been more serious about anything in my life. Why? Why does this matter to you now when it didn't before? Victoria was quiet for a moment. Because I looked in the mirror after that flight and didn't recognize the person staring back. I'd become someone I despised, someone my younger self would have been ashamed of. She met his eyes. You asked me if seeing you saluted would change how I treat the next person in worn clothes. The answer is yes. It changed everything. Daniel closed the folder, pushed it back across the table. I don't forgive you. Not yet. Maybe not ever. What your company did, what you enabled it, took my wife from me. It took Noah's mother from him. That's not something I can just let go. Victoria nodded. I understand. But I appreciate you telling me the truth, and I appreciate that you're trying to change. Daniel stood. If you're serious about the Foundation, you should talk to Captain Morrison at Coronado. He knows better than anyone what families need. Thank you, I will. Daniel walked toward the door, then stopped, turned back. Ms. Hartley? Yes. The next time you're on an airplane and you see someone in worn clothes with calloused hands, remember this conversation. Remember that you don't know their story. Remember that worth isn't measured by appearance. I will. I promise. Daniel left the coffee shop feeling something he hadn't expected. Not closure exactly, but something adjacent to it. A sense that Sarah's death, while senseless and preventable, might lead to changes that would save others. It wasn't enough. Nothing would ever be enough. But it was something. That evening he told Noah about the meeting. The mean lady from the airplane. She's trying to be less mean. Did she say sorry? She did. Do you believe her? Daniel thought about the question. Really thought. Yeah, buddy, I think I do. Then maybe you should forgive her. Noah's voice was matter of fact. Mom always said holding on to anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to get sick. When did she tell you that? When I was mad at Tommy Perkins for breaking my truck. She said forgiveness isn't for the other person. It's for you, so you can let go and move forward. Daniel pulled his son close. Your mom was really smart. I know, that's why I listened. Spring turned to summer. Noah finished third grade with straight A's. Daniel's training classes continued to excel. Life settled into something that felt almost normal. Almost. Because normal included the nightmares that still came less frequently, but no less vivid. Normal included the panic attacks that ambushed him without warning. Normal included the grief that lived in his chest like a permanent resident, quieter now, but never gone. Dr. Chen called it integration. Learning to live with the trauma instead of constantly fighting it. You're not trying to forget, she explained. You're learning to remember without being destroyed by it. Is that possible? You're doing it every day. In June, Noah's school had a father-son event. Picnic in the park, games and activities. A chance for dads to show up. Daniel had avoided these events for years. The crowded spaces, the social expectations, the inevitable questions about Noah's mother. It was easier to make excuses, but this time, Noah asked specifically. Please, Dad. All my friends' dads are going. I want to show you off. Show me off? Yeah, you're the coolest dad. You teach Navy SEALs. Nobody else's dad does that. How could he say no? The park was packed with families. Daniel felt the familiar anxiety rise as he scanned the crowd. Too many people. Too many unknown variables. His training kicked in automatically, identifying exits, assessing potential threats. Dad? Noah tugged his hand. Relax. It's just a picnic. Right. Just a picnic. They found a spot on the grass. Noah immediately ran off to join his friends, leaving Daniel alone with the other fathers. Men in polo shirts and khakis, talking about golf and stock portfolios and vacation homes. Daniel felt out of place. Wrong clothes, wrong background, wrong everything. Then a woman approached. Dark hair, warm smile, a girl about Noah's age in tow. You must be Noah's dad. I'm Michelle Torres, Maya's mom. The nurse, the single mother Noah had mentioned months ago. Daniel Reeves, nice to meet you. Maya talks about Noah constantly. He's a good influence on her. Michelle smiled. She says his dad is a hero who teaches Navy SEALs. I'm not a hero, just a consultant. That's not what Maya says. According to her, you saved hundreds of people, and your call sign is Shadow something. Daniel laughed despite himself. Kids exaggerate. Do they? Michelle's eyes were sharp, perceptive. Because I've worked at Naval Medical Center San Diego for 12 years. I've heard that name before. Shadow 1. You're kind of a legend in certain circles. Daniel didn't know what to say. Relax, Michelle said. I'm not going to make a big deal about it. I just wanted you to know that I understand. My ex-husband was Marine Corps, Fallujah. He came back different. We tried to make it work, but—" She shrugged. "Some wounds don't heal the way you want them to. I'm sorry." "Don't be. We're both better off, and Maya has a relationship with both of us. That's what matters." She paused. "I also wanted to say thank you. For the men you train. Some of them end up at my hospital. The ones from your program are different. More willing to talk about what they're going through, more open to help. I just tell them the truth. The truth saves lives. Trust me, I've seen both sides." They talked for an hour. About their kids, their jobs, their lives. Michelle was easy to talk to. No pretense, no judgment, just genuine conversation. Noah and Maya ran over, eventually sweaty and laughing. "Dad, can Maya come over sometime? Her mom said it's okay if you say yes." Daniel looked at Michelle. She was smiling. "I think that could be arranged." The playdate happened the following weekend. Michelle dropped Maya off, stayed for coffee, ended up staying for dinner. They talked until the kids fell asleep on the couch, exhausted from playing. "I should get Maya home," Michelle said, but she didn't move. "You could stay. I'll take the couch. The kids can have Noah's room." "That's very generous, but I don't want to impose." "It's not an imposition. It's nice having another adult to talk to." Daniel paused. "I've been pretty isolated since my wife died. It's good to remember what normal feels like." Michelle studied him. "How long ago did you lose her?" 3 years, 2 months, 17 days. "You count the days." I stopped for a while, then started again. "I'm not sure what that means." "It means you loved her, and you still do." Michelle's voice was gentle. "That's not a bad thing, Daniel. It's just a true thing. I don't know how to move forward without feeling like I'm betraying her memory." "You're not betraying anything. You're living. That's what she would have wanted." Michelle paused. "At least that's what I tell myself about my marriage. That moving forward isn't betrayal. It's survival." They stayed up talking until 2 in the morning. About grief and loss and the slow, painful process of rebuilding. About raising kids alone and the guilt that came with it. About hope and fear and the complicated space between. When Michelle finally left the next morning, Maya in tow, Daniel felt something he hadn't felt in years. Possibility. "Dad!" Noah was watching him from the hallway. "You like Miss Michelle? She's nice? You smile different when you talk to her, like you used to smile at Mom." Daniel's chest tightened. "Is that okay with you?" "Mom would want you to be happy. She told me once." Noah walked over, took Daniel's hand. "She said if anything ever happened to her, she wanted you to find someone who made you smile again. She made me promise to remind you. She said that the night before her last mission. I didn't understand then. I do now." Noah squeezed his hand. "It's okay to like Miss Michelle, Dad. It's okay to be happy." Daniel crouched to his son's level, looked into those gray eyes. Sarah's eyes. "When did you get so wise?" "I learned from you. And from Mom. You both taught me that love doesn't run out. That having more doesn't mean loving less." Daniel pulled his son into a hug. Held him tight while the morning sun streamed through the windows of their apartment, their home. "I love you, Noah." "I love you too, Dad." The summer continued. Daniel and Michelle saw each other more. Coffee dates while the kids were at school. Dinners when schedules aligned. Long conversations that stretched into the night. It was slow. Careful. Both of them carrying wounds that hadn't fully healed. Both of them afraid of moving too fast or expecting too much. But it was real. And that was enough. In August, Captain Morrison called Daniel into his office with unexpected news. The Department of Defense is launching a joint training initiative. Multi-branch, multinational. They want our best tactical minds involved in the planning. What does that have to do with me? They specifically requested you, by name. Morrison slid a folder across his desk. 3 weeks at the Pentagon, helping design training scenarios for Allied forces. It's a big deal, Daniel. High visibility, career-making opportunity. Daniel opened the folder, read the details, felt excitement and terror war in his chest. 3 weeks away from Noah. We can accommodate that. Base childcare, plus I'm sure there are other options. Michelle. Daniel thought of her immediately, then felt guilty for thinking it. Can I have a few days to decide? Take a week. But Daniel? This is the kind of opportunity that doesn't come twice. You've rebuilt your reputation. This could cement it. That evening, Daniel told Noah about the opportunity. 3 weeks is a long time, Dad. I know, buddy. That's why I wanted to talk to you first. Would I stay with Miss Michelle? If she's willing. And if you're comfortable with that. Noah was quiet for a moment, thinking. Then he looked up with those serious gray eyes. Mom would want you to go. How do you know? Because it's important. Because it helps people. Because hiding from opportunities isn't what heroes do. Noah paused. You're still a hero, Dad. Even when you're scared. Daniel called Michelle that night. Of course Noah can stay with us. Maya will be thrilled. She paused. And Daniel, take the opportunity. You've earned it. What if I fail? What if you succeed? What if this is the thing that proves to yourself that you're not broken, that you're capable of more than just surviving? Daniel was quiet for a long moment. You sound like my therapist. I'll take that as a compliment. He accepted the assignment. Flew to Washington. Spent 3 weeks in rooms full of generals and admirals and international military leaders contributing to discussions that would shape training doctrine for years to come. It was terrifying and exhilarating, and everything Morrison had promised. On the last day, a 4-star general pulled him aside. Commander Reeves, your contributions have been invaluable. I've read your history. The missions, the discharge, the comeback. You're exactly what we need more of in this organization. Thank you, sir. I'm not just saying that. I'm offering you a position, DoD civilian consultant. You'd work directly with my office on strategic training initiatives, significant pay increase, national-level impact. Daniel's heart raced. Sir, I have a son. I can't relocate. No relocation required. You'd work primarily from Coronado with occasional travel. We'd build the position around your constraints. The general paused. You've spent 3 years believing you were finished. I'm here to tell you you're just getting started. Daniel flew home with a job offer in his briefcase and something unfamiliar in his chest. Hope. Noah ran to him at the airport, launched himself into Daniel's arms. Dad, I missed you so much. I missed you too, buddy. Did you teach the generals good stuff? I tried. I bet you were amazing. Noah pulled back, grinning. Miss Michelle said you called every night. She said you sounded happy. I was happy. Am happy. Daniel looked over Noah's head to where Michelle stood waiting. She was smiling. Very happy. They went to dinner, the 4 of them, Daniel and Noah and Michelle and Maya, like a family, not replacing what was lost, not forgetting Sarah, but building something new, something different, something that honored the past while embracing the future. I have news, Daniel said over dessert. They offered me a promotion, national-level stuff, more money, more impact, more everything. Dad, that's amazing. Noah's face lit up. Are you going to take it? Michelle asked. Daniel looked at the 3 faces watching him. The son who'd never stopped believing in him. The woman who'd shown him that moving forward wasn't betrayal. The girl who'd become like a daughter without anyone planning it. Yeah, I think I am. Michelle reached across the table, took his hand. I'm proud of you. I couldn't have done it without support from all of you. That's what family is for, Noah said matter-of-factly. We support each other. That's the rule. When did we make that rule? Just now. I made it up. But it's a good rule, right? Daniel laughed. Actually laughed. Full and real, and without the shadow that had lived behind every smile for 3 years. Yeah, buddy, it's a great rule. They drove home through San Diego streets that had become familiar, past the naval base where Daniel had found his purpose again, past the hospital where Michelle saved lives every day, past the school where Noah and Maya were growing up together. Home. Not the life Daniel had planned, not the life he'd wanted, but a good life, a full life, a life that Sarah would have been proud of. The titanium bracelet caught the streetlights as Daniel drove. Shadow 1. He wasn't hiding from that name anymore, wasn't ashamed of it, wasn't using it as a reminder of everything he'd lost. Now it was a reminder of everything he'd survived, everything he'd rebuilt, everything he'd become. Shadow 1. Still standing, still fighting, still moving forward, one day at a time. 1 year later, Daniel stood in front of a mirror adjusting a tie he still wasn't comfortable wearing. The man looking back at him was different from the one who'd boarded that flight to San Diego. The oil stains were gone, the worn clothes replaced by a suit that actually fit. The haunted look in his eyes softened into something that almost resembled peace. Almost. Dad, you look fancy. Noah appeared in the doorway, already dressed in his own suit. 9 years old now, growing faster than Daniel could track. Sarah's eyes in a face that was becoming more his own every day. You think so? Miss Michelle is going to think you're really handsome. Daniel laughed. That's the hope, buddy. Today was the day. The ceremony at Coronado where Daniel would receive the Navy Distinguished Civilian Service Award, the highest honor the Navy could give to a non-military employee. Recognition for his contributions to training, his impact on doctrine, his role in saving lives he would never meet. Morrison had told him about it 3 months ago. Daniel had tried to refuse. I don't need awards, sir. I'm just doing my job. This isn't about what you need. It's about what you've earned, and what the young operators need to see. Morrison's voice had been firm. They need to see that service doesn't end with discharge. That contribution matters regardless of uniform status. You're living proof of that. So Daniel had agreed, reluctantly. Now standing in front of the mirror, the weight of the moment pressed down on him. This wasn't just an award. It was acknowledgement, validation, proof that the 3 years of survival, the pain of rebuilding, the daily choice to keep going despite everything, had meant something. Dad. Noah's voice pulled him back. Are you nervous? Terrified. Why, you've done way scarier things than give a speech. Speeches are different. In combat you just react. In speeches you have to think, and thinking is dangerous. Noah laughed. That bright, uncomplicated laugh that still had the power to make everything feel lighter. You'll be great, Dad. You're always great. Michelle arrived 30 minutes later. She wore a blue dress that matched her eyes. Her dark hair pulled back in a way that made Daniel's breath catch. You clean up nice, Commander? You're not so bad yourself. They'd been together officially for 8 months now. Moving slowly, carefully, neither of them willing to rush something that felt important. Michelle understood his grief, understood that Sarah would always be part of his story, understood that loving someone new didn't mean loving someone less. Maya ran past them to find Noah. The two kids had become inseparable, more siblings than friends. You ready for this? Michelle asked. No. Good. That means you're taking it seriously. She adjusted his tie, even though it didn't need adjusting. I'm proud of you, Daniel. Whatever happens today, I want you to know that. I couldn't have gotten here without you. You would have found your way. You're stronger than you think. She kissed him softly. Now let's go. We don't want to be late for your big moment. The ceremony was held at the main auditorium on base. Rows of chairs filled with operators' officers' families. The people who'd watched Daniel's journey from broken veteran to invaluable consultant. Webb was there sitting near the front with his wife and daughter. The little girl was 6 now, the one who existed because Daniel had refused to leave her father behind in Kandahar. Rodriguez and Chen sat nearby now, senior operators themselves. Jenkins was deployed, but had sent a video message that would play during the ceremony. Captain Morrison stood at the podium, silver hair gleaming under the light's command presence, radiating as always. Ladies and gentlemen, we're here today to honor someone extraordinary, not because of his combat record, though that alone would be enough, not because of his tactical innovations, though they've saved countless lives, but because of what he represents. Daniel sat in the front row, Noah on one side, Michelle on the other. His hands were shaking slightly, the familiar anxiety rising. Commander Daniel Reeves, call sign Shadow 1, served this country with distinction for 15 years. He conducted operations most of us will never know about. He brought men home who should have died. He developed tactics that became doctrine. Morrison paused. Let the words settle. And then life broke him, the way it breaks all of us eventually. He lost his wife, his partner, his fellow warrior. He lost his ability to serve in the way he'd always served. He was discharged, sent home, told that his contributions were finished. Daniel felt Noah's hand find his, squeeze tight. Most men in that position disappear. They surrender to the grief, the trauma, the conviction that their best days are behind them. Commander Reeves could have done that. No one would have blamed him. Morrison's eyes found Daniel's. But he didn't. He rebuilt. Slowly, painfully, with setbacks and struggles that would have defeated lesser men. He found a new way to serve. He became the teacher his experience had qualified him to be. And in doing so, he changed everything. The room was silent. Completely silent. The operators Commander Reeves has trained are different. They're more tactically skilled, yes. More prepared for the chaos of combat. But more importantly, they're more open. More willing to discuss the psychological cost of service. More likely to seek help when they need it. Morrison stepped back from the podium. This award recognizes exceptional civilian service to the Navy. But what I want Commander Reeves to understand is that his service goes beyond any award. He's shown every person in this room that broken doesn't mean finished, that endings can become beginnings, that the measure of a man isn't whether he falls, but whether he gets back up. Morrison turned to Daniel. Commander, would you join me? Daniel stood. His legs felt uncertain, but they carried him forward, up the stairs to the stage, across the platform to where Morrison waited with a medal and a certificate. For extraordinary contribution to the United States Navy, for tactical innovations that have saved countless lives, and for exemplary dedication to the training and welfare of naval personnel, I am honored to present the Navy Distinguished Civilian Service Award to Commander Daniel Reeves. Morrison pinned the medal to Daniel's chest, shook his hand, then stepped back, gesturing toward the podium. The commander has prepared some remarks. Daniel approached the microphone, looked out at the faces watching him. Webb and his family, Rodriguez and Chen, Michelle and Noah and Maya, hundreds of others whose names he might not know but whose service he honored. His prepared speech was in his pocket. He'd written it 3 weeks ago, revised it a dozen times, practiced it until he could deliver it in his sleep. He didn't reach for it. When I boarded a flight from Chicago to San Diego 18 months ago, I was invisible. The words came from somewhere deeper than preparation, somewhere more honest. I was wearing worn-out clothes and oil-stained boots. I was working as a mechanic for $14 an hour. I was raising my son alone, barely surviving, convinced that my best days were behind me. He paused. Let the silence stretch. A woman on that flight looked at me like I was garbage, like I didn't deserve to share her space. She didn't know my history, my service, my sacrifice. She just saw the clothes and made her judgment. Daniel found Victoria's face in the crowd. She'd come. He hadn't known she would be here, but there she was, sitting near the back, watching with an expression he couldn't quite read. I don't blame her. Not anymore. Because for 3 years I'd been looking at myself the same way. Seeing only the failure, only the loss, only the broken pieces of who I used to be. He touched the titanium bracelet on his wrist. Shadow 1. Then my plane made an emergency landing at this base. And everything changed. Not because of anything I did, but because of you. Because the SEALs who met that plane saw something I'd forgotten how to see. They saw the man behind the clothes, the warrior behind the wounds, the father who was still fighting even if the battlefield had changed. Daniel's voice cracked. He didn't try to hide it. Senior Chief Webb is here today with his daughter. She's 6 years old. Beautiful and brilliant and alive because 12 years ago I refused to leave her father in the sand. I didn't do anything special that day. I just did what any of us would do for a brother. I kept moving until we were both safe. He found Webb's eyes, saw the older man wiping his face. But here's what I learned. The saving goes both ways. Webb survived Kandahar because I carried him. I survived these last 3 years because people like him carried me. That's what brotherhood means. That's what family means. We take turns being strong. We take turns being weak. And we never ever leave anyone behind. Daniel looked at Noah. His son was crying openly, not embarrassed by the tears, not trying to hide them. My son is here today. Noah. He's 9 years old. He lost his mother when he was 6. And he has spent every day since then teaching me things I should have known but forgot. He took a breath, steadied himself. He taught me that grief doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. He taught me that moving forward isn't betraying the ones we've lost, it's honoring them. He taught me that love doesn't run out no matter how many people you love. Daniel's eyes moved to Michelle. She was holding Maya's hand, both of them watching him with open hearts. I have a new family now, not a replacement for what I lost. Something different. Something Sarah would have wanted for me and for Noah. A woman who understands that I'll always love my wife and loves me anyway. A little girl who calls my son her brother and means it. He stepped back from the podium slightly, gathered himself for what came next. This award is an honor I don't feel worthy of, but I'm learning that worthiness isn't something we decide for ourselves. It's something others see in us even when we can't see it ourselves. He looked around the room one more time, at the faces of operators he'd trained, at the officers who'd given him a second chance, at the family he'd built from broken pieces and stubborn hope. To everyone in this room who believed in me when I couldn't believe in myself, thank you. To the Navy that took me back when I thought I had nothing left to offer, thank you. To my son who never stopped thinking I was a hero even when I felt like a failure, thank you. His voice dropped to barely above a whisper, but in the silent room every word carried. And to Sarah, my wife, my partner, my shadow too. I know you're watching. I know you're proud. I promise I'll keep going. I'll keep teaching. I'll keep showing our son what it means to fall down and get back up. That's the mission now, and I won't fail it. Daniel stepped back from the podium. The room erupted in applause. He didn't hear it, didn't process the standing ovation, the hands clapping, the voices cheering. All he felt was Noah crashing into him, arms wrapping tight, small body shaking with sobs. I love you, Dad. I love you so much. I love you too, buddy. More than anything. Michelle was there too. And Maya. The four of them standing on that stage, holding each other, while the applause continued, and the moment stretched into something that felt like permanence. After the ceremony, there was a reception. Handshakes and congratulations, and stories shared by operators who'd trained under Daniel's guidance. A young lieutenant approached him, barely old enough to shave, but with the bearing of someone who'd already seen too much. Sir, I was in your first training class, the one where you had the panic attack. Daniel remembered, the moment of shame he'd never fully escaped. I wanted to thank you for that day. The lieutenant's voice was steady. My older brother struggled after his deployments. We didn't know. He didn't tell anyone. He died by suicide 3 years ago. Daniel's chest tightened. When you had that attack, when you were honest about what you were going through, it changed something in me. Made me realize that struggling isn't weakness, that asking for help is strength. The lieutenant paused. I've had hard days since, but I talk about them now. Because of you. I'm sorry about your brother. Thank you, sir. But I wanted you to know that your honesty that day might have saved my life, and definitely changed it. The lieutenant walked away. Daniel stood still processing. He'd spent months feeling ashamed of that panic attack, convinced it had undermined his authority, his credibility, his right to teach. But here was proof that vulnerability could be its own kind of strength, that the cracks were where the light got in. Webb approached with his daughter in tow. The little girl was shy, hiding behind her father's leg. Emma, this is Commander Reeves, the man I told you about. Emma peeked out. You're the one who carried my daddy. I am. Thank you. Her voice was small, but certain. Daddy says I exist because of you. Daniel crouched to her level. Your daddy is the brave one. He's the reason I kept moving. If he'd given up, I would have too. Emma considered this with the seriousness of a 6-year-old confronting complex truths. So you saved each other? That's exactly right. She nodded, satisfied with this answer, then threw her arms around his neck in a hug that nearly knocked him over. Thank you for saving each other. Daniel held her gently, felt Webb's hand on his shoulder. She's been wanting to meet you for months, Webb said quietly. She knows the story, all of it. Tells everyone her daddy's friend is a hero. I'm not a hero. You are to her. And to me. That's what matters. The reception continued. Daniel moved through it in a kind of daze, accepting congratulations. He still didn't feel he deserved sharing stories with men and women who'd become his new brotherhood. Near the end, Victoria Hartley approached. She looked different from their last meeting, older somehow, more settled into her own skin. Commander, congratulations. Ms. Hartley, I didn't expect to see you here. Captain Morrison invited me. I think he wanted me to see what my company's failures had cost, and what surviving those failures could look like. Daniel wasn't sure how to respond. The foundation is up and running, Victoria continued. We've helped 47 families so far, survivors of equipment failures, training accidents, classified operations. We can't bring back what they lost, but we can make sure they're not forgotten. That's good work. It's a start. She paused. I wanted you to know that I think about that airplane every day, about the lesson you taught me without trying, about looking at people instead of through them. And are you better? Victoria smiled sadly. I'm trying. Some days are harder than others, but I'm trying. That's all any of us can do. She shook his hand, then walked away, disappearing into the crowd. Daniel found Morrison near the exit. Sir, thank you. For everything. The opportunity, the award, all of it. You earned it, Daniel. Every bit of it. Morrison paused. What's next for you? The DoD position. More training work. Raising my son. Daniel smiled. Maybe getting married again if I can work up the courage to ask. Morrison laughed. I saw the way that woman looks at you. I don't think courage will be an issue. They shook hands. Morrison pulled him into a brief hug. You're a good man, Daniel Reeves. Don't ever forget that. I won't, sir. Not anymore. The drive home was quiet. Noah fell asleep in the back seat, exhausted from the emotion of the day. Maya slept beside him, her head on his shoulder, the two of them looking like siblings in the way that chosen family sometimes does. Michelle reached over, took Daniel's hand. How do you feel? I don't know. He thought about the question. Really thought. Grateful. Overwhelmed. Like maybe I actually belong in my own life for the first time in years. You do belong. You always did. You just forgot for a while. They pulled into the driveway of the house they'd bought together 3 months ago. 4 bedrooms, a yard for the kids, a neighborhood where everyone waved when you walked by. Home. Daniel carried Noah inside, laid him in his bed, tucked him in the way he'd done thousands of times before. "Dad," Noah's voice was sleepy. "Yeah, buddy. Today was a good day." "Yeah, it really was." Mom would have been proud. Daniel felt tears prick his eyes. "I hope so. I know so." Noah's eyes were closing. "She told me to take care of you. I think I'm doing a good job." "The best job, buddy. The absolute best." Daniel kissed his son's forehead, stood in the doorway for a moment watching him sleep. This boy. This impossible, wonderful, resilient boy. The reason Daniel had kept going when every instinct screamed to give up. The anchor that had held him fast when the storms tried to sweep him away. Michelle was waiting in the hallway. "He okay?" "He's perfect." They walked downstairs together, sat on the couch in the living room they'd decorated together. Photos on the walls of their blended family. Sarah's picture among them, honored but not haunting. "I love you," Daniel said. "I love you too." "I want to marry you." The words surprised him. He hadn't planned to say them, but they felt right. True. Michelle's eyes widened. "Daniel, not today, not tomorrow, but someday. When we're both ready. I want you to know that's where I'm headed. That's the future I'm building toward." She was crying now, happy tears he hoped. "I want that too." They held each other in the quiet of their home, their life, the impossible, beautiful thing they'd built from broken pieces and stubborn love. Later that night, Daniel stood on the back porch, looking up at stars he'd stopped noticing years ago. The titanium bracelet caught the moonlight. Shadow 1. He wasn't the man who'd earned that name. That man had died in the stages first when Sarah's helicopter went down, then when the Navy discharged him, then every day he'd spent invisible and dismissed and convinced he was worthless. But he wasn't that broken man either. Not anymore. He was someone new. Someone who'd learned that endings weren't failures, that grief wasn't weakness, that asking for help was the bravest thing a warrior could do. Someone who'd discovered that you could love again without betraying the ones you'd lost, that you could build a new family without forgetting the old one, that the measure of a life wasn't the heights you reached, but the depths you survived. The back door opened. Noah padded out in his pajamas, rubbing his eyes. "Can't sleep." "Just thinking." Noah stood beside him, looked up at the same stars. "What are you thinking about?" "Your mom, this life. How lucky I am." Mom would say luck is what happens when preparation meets opportunity. Daniel laughed. "She did say that, a lot. She was smart. The smartest person I ever knew." They stood together in silence, father and son, the remnants of one family and the foundation of another. "Dad." "Yeah, buddy. Are you happy?" Daniel thought about the question, really thought. He thought about Sarah, about the love that would never fade, and the grief that would never fully disappear, about the life they'd built together and the future they'd never share. He thought about Noah, about watching his son grow into a young man with his mother's eyes and his father's stubbornness, about the pride that swelled his chest every time Noah showed courage or kindness or both. He thought about Michelle, about the unexpected gift of loving again, about the family they were building from broken pieces and hopeful hearts. He thought about the work, the operators he trained, the lives he touched, the difference he made every single day. He thought about the man he'd been on that airplane, invisible, dismissed, convinced his best days were behind him. And he thought about the man he'd become, honored, respected, surrounded by people who saw his worth even when he couldn't see it himself. "Yeah, buddy," Daniel said finally. "I'm happy. Really happy." "Good." Noah leaned against his father's side. "That's all I ever wanted for you." When did you get so wise? I learned from you, Dad, and from Mom. You both taught me the most important thing. What's that? Noah looked up at him, Sarah's eyes, full of certainty and love. That broken things can be fixed, that endings are just beginnings in disguise, and that the people who fall the hardest are the ones who learn to fly. Daniel pulled his son close, held him tight under the stars his wife used to navigate by. He wasn't the man everyone laughed at anymore. He wasn't the failure in the cheap clothes, the veteran nobody noticed, the father barely surviving. He was Shadow 1, teacher, father, survivor. He was a man who'd learned that worth isn't measured by the seats you sit in, or the clothes you wear, or the money in your bank account. Worth is measured by how you treat your children, how you serve your community, how you get back up when life knocks you down. He was a man who'd discovered that the Navy SEALs who saluted him on that tarmac weren't honoring his past. They were recognizing his present. The courage it takes to keep going, the strength it takes to rebuild, the grace it takes to let yourself be loved again. He was a man who'd finally understood that some missions don't have extraction points. Some battles don't have clear victories. Some wars are fought in the quiet hours of the night against enemies that live inside your own head. But you fight them anyway. You keep showing up. You keep choosing life over surrender, hope over despair, love over fear. Because that's what warriors do. That's what fathers do. That's what survivors do. The stars wheeled overhead, the same stars Sarah had used to guide her helicopters home. The same stars that would guide Noah wherever his life took him. The same stars that would watch over this family, broken and rebuilt and stronger for the breaking. Daniel Reeves stood in his backyard, his son at his side, his future waiting inside, and felt something he hadn't felt in years. Complete. Not because he had everything. Not because the pain was gone, or the grief had faded, or the nightmares had stopped. But because he'd learned to carry it all. To let the weight make him stronger instead of crushing him. To transform the breaking into a breakthrough. Shadow 1. Still standing. Still fighting. Still flying. Just in different skies. And those skies, Daniel finally understood, were exactly where he belonged.